Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the State of the Arc podcast. My name is Mike.
My name's Kason.
Today, we're talking about stakes in storytelling, how to create high stakes.
Stake, you hammer a stake into the ground.
Not that type. The type where the conflict means something very important to you, and success. You have no choice but to succeed. Failure would be the end of everything for you. High stakes.
Yeah.
How do you create high stakes, but in a small scale story, a non-end of the world plot, which tends to be very, very common.
Yeah.
Or even just a life or death situation. How do you do that for stories that don't include? It is hard to find examples. They're few and far between, but there are many there, and I think that we have the answer for how to do that. Before we do that, there is 3 news stories in particular this week that we wanted to touch on. The first one, a lot of Switch news this week. First, a Nintendo Switch Lite was announced. A handheld only Switch that's a little bit smaller, a little more, I guess, portable, but does not have detachable Joy-Cons, and which would make it incompatible with certain games. I think you brought up Mario Party at the beginning.
Yeah, Mario Party or 1-2 Switch, things like that.
Now, one thing I am interested in, could you take Joy-Cons and sync them to the Switch Lite?
My understanding is that, yes, you can do that.
So you could technically still play Mario Party.
But here's the thing. The Switch Portable doesn't have a kickstand. So you could sync your normal Switch controllers to the Switch Lite, but how you actually play it on the Switch Lite is
put a rock in the back of it.
Yeah, you got to prop it up somehow, and then you can play on a tiny screen, I guess. But I don't see that being super useful.
Yeah. So, anyways, certain games were to be either incompatible or more difficult, but the draw was it had a higher battery life. I think the original Switch's battery life, depending on the game you're playing, how intense it is, with its power draw, would be anywhere from 2 to 6 hours, something like that.
Yeah. I never got 6, but I never played tiny.
I think I've gotten close. I think I've gotten close to about 4.5. Because I've played games like Hyper Light Drifter or...
Yeah, I played Shovel Knight for a while, and that one wasn't too intense, I guess.
Final Fantasy VII or...
Golf Story. Yeah. I played Golf Story on the TV, though, so I don't know.
I mostly play on the TV as well. So I'm never actually out playing that thing long enough to actually drain its entire battery anyways.
Yeah.
When I go on my vacation in August, it will probably... On the flights and stuff, I probably will be close to that. Yeah. But... So I'm going to see there if there's... I just never travel there. There's no point in buying it. Anyways. So the weird thing about this, though, right, is that after they announced the Switch Lite, which it seemed like the entire draw was, this is a more portable system, and it's $100 cheaper. I can't forget to mention that. That's a big one. So it's $200 rather than $300. So I think a lot of people will pick it up just because it's a lot more affordable.
Yeah.
But right after they announced that, they then announce a new base Switch model. They put it on the screen here. Oops, I have it on the wrong side. Hold on. Move that over there. Move this over here. There we go. And this one is basically the same thing as the base model of the Switch you have right now, except it has a way, way longer battery life. So here it is. The original Switch had a battery life of between 2.5 and 6.5 hours, depending on the game or application that you're playing. The new Switch model has a 4.5 to 9 hour battery life,
which is crazy.
That's really, really good.
Yeah,
like really good. I think that the Switch Lite's battery life was between 3 to 7 hours, so it really only increased it by half an hour to an hour-ish at most, more battery life than you would have gotten the base Switch, which is better, but not like significantly better. The new base model for the Switch is significantly better. It's like 2 to 3 hours more. So it's like I struggle to understand, unless you really can't save up the money for it or something like that, why you would even consider the Switch Lite, because the Switch is still portable and it has a longer battery life, and you get more features with it, and you can take the Joy-Cons off, and you have access to all the games, all the library. Like, why would you buy the Switch Lite?
It's almost like the Switch Lite needs to be even cheaper. It needs to be like $150 or something. Yeah. Not like because it just doesn't. It doesn't seem like a very good deal anymore. It's like an okay deal, I guess. I did have one thought though. That the new Switch, sometimes, and this just happens in general when you're making electronics, but as you continue to have the Switches assembled and you continue to have the chips and everything manufactured, sometimes it actually makes more sense, and it's cheaper as a business decision to go with a newer chipset, because it's being more mass produced, and it's actually cheaper to make it than for you to continue ordering the 2016 chip over and over that they have to then go back and make, when at the moment they're currently making all of these 2019 ones that are better, faster, and they're mass produced like crazy. And it's actually cheaper to just kind of go with one of those. So I don't even know that the Switch necessarily like tried to outdo itself, to outdo the Lite. Yeah. I think it just kind of happened that way. And they're like, well, it was cheaper to go with these things, and it makes the battery life longer. So
why not?
Well, we still got the Switch Lite, so we'll just do both, I guess. Like, all right.
See, now this is something that I've said in the past. This is why it's such a hard thing, because the people who support a console or a product at launch make possible the future iteration that is better, right? But it's like, I almost always feel like, why buy the thing at launch? If you wait a couple of years, you're going to get a superior version of it.
It's almost like when the PS5 comes out, that's when you should buy a PS4.
Yeah.
Not only would it be cheaper, and you got a massive library of games, but it's the only downside is you can't play the brand new, Breath of the Wild, the brand new game as soon as it comes out. But if you're just okay with that, you can spend a lot less money and play some pretty killer games. Just wait.
Everybody has such a huge backlog now to where it's like, unless it's just like there's no way I can miss a brand new game from my favorite franchise, right? Like, I just gotta have it when it's brand new.
Yeah, and
to me, that is growing smaller and smaller all the time.
I think so.
Where it's like, my backlog is so huge that I'm just excited to play Grandia as I am to play anything coming out this year.
Anything new. Yeah.
Like, I've heard such great things. I haven't tried it out yet. I have probably 100 games like that, where it's like, I'd be just as excited to play that for the first time than something that came up brand new. So it's like, my backlog's so huge anyways, it's not like I'm going to have a lack of games to play while I wait for a better model of this new console that'll be cheaper and perform better and everything else.
Yeah.
I want to take a look at the comparisons for battery life on other things, though. So the Nintendo Switch Lite, 3 to 7 hours, which is 1.5 to 2 hours fewer than this new Switch model.
Yeah.
We have the new 2DS XL. This is what really surprised me. The new 2DS XL has 1 to 2.5 fewer hours. The new 2DS, so this doesn't even have the 3D capability, right? Gets between 3.5 to 6.5 hours of battery life. Like, what the fetch? How is the Switch battery, which has like 720p in undocked, much more intensive in terms of like graphical capability, like far outweighing the 2DS XL? It's crazy. We have the 3DS is 1 to 3 hours fewer. It only goes up to about 6-hour battery life. A lot of people were complaining about the Switch's battery life when it came out, but it was like, dude, the 3DS is like the same. Yeah. 3DS XL gets 3.5 to 7, which is 1 to 2 hours fewer than the new Switch model. We got 2DS 1 to 3 and that one really surprised me. Just the regular 2DS, like that brick thing that doesn't like fold at all.
Yeah, that's crazy. Is it just the 2 screens? Is it the 2 screens and maybe a touch screen might?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like there's something about it that's just not, and it's not as big, although it was still pretty big.
That thing only gets 3.5 to 5.5 hours.
Wow, that's crazy.
That's like worse than the Switches we have already.
Yeah, that's true.
We got the PS Vita Slim. Gets half an hour to 3 hours fewer. So it goes 4 to 6 hours. So that maximum is 6 hours for the PS Vita.
Mm-hmm.
The PSP, same deal, about 4 to 6 hours. So could be up to 3 hours fewer than the new Switch model. The Nintendo DS Lite got 5 to 8 hours, a little bit higher than most of these other things, but that could still be, fewer, up to at least an hour fewer than. Now here's where we get some devices that had higher battery life, but if I'm not mistaken, I can't remember if the original DS model had a rechargeable battery. I think it did, but I didn't get the Nintendo DS until the Lite came out. So
yeah, that's a good question.
I know that the Lite, you had a rechargeable battery. You plugged it in the wall, you recharged it. I don't know about the Nintendo DS. That might have maybe had AA's you stick in there, which might be the determining factor here because it gets 10 hours of battery life. Someone correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on that. But beyond that, we have the Game Boy Advance, which got 7 to 10 hours. That was also rechargeable. The Game Boy Advance SP, the foldable one, you plugged that in, right?
That one, I don't think it was thick enough to have just extra batteries. I think it was rechargeable.
I think it was too.
It also had the backlight. The backlight, which the original Advance, I did not have. Had. Yeah,
that's actually a good point because the Game Boy Advance, the regular Game Boy Advance had 15 hours. That's probably why.
Yeah, it didn't have a backlight, and it was just AA's.
It just you stick AA's in there, which is the drawback. Like you have to buy batteries every time. Yeah, but had no backlight, gets 15 hours, which is nuts. Game Boy Color got 10 hours. The original Game Boy got 15 hours. So unless you're going back to like really primitive stuff that had no backlight on it and required that you stick AA's in it, this is like one of the highest battery life devices I can think of in recent memory. Yeah, at least for gaming. I don't know what like an iPad gets, generally speaking.
Well, I don't know either. Actually, I don't think it's
that high.
I know like the Air. The iPad Airs, like the newer models, did get somewhere around 8 hours, I think. But that was operating on flash memory, and they're pretty big still. So you can fit a pretty dang big battery inside of those just because the screen's so big.
Yeah. Yeah, people are confirming the SP, the Game Boy Advance SP, was the first Nintendo handheld that did not use AA's. You could recharge it.
If you're playing a game on an iPad though, you don't get very much time. Velhart's saying 4 to 5 hours depending on how intense the game is.
Yeah. See, so there you go. Like it feels like this new Switch model's battery life is about as high as you can get on like a modern device of this type, which is nuts. That's crazy. So I think that's worth getting. And this is another thing.
It's pretty cool. Oh, although it doesn't improve the performance, it just improves the battery life. But that, if you take things places ever, then that's totally worth it. I don't do it very often. But
the last, I want to say, month, maybe since E3 a little bit, but definitely during the last month, the Switch has become my favorite console of the consoles out right now.
Yeah.
Right. Like I think early on in its life cycle, I didn't play it very much. Yeah. I was like,
it was my favorite, like the month it came out.
Yeah.
Because it did come out with some pretty cool games. It just then didn't have many more cool games for a very long time.
It took a while. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I played the PlayStation a lot.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, it feels all of a sudden. It hasn't been. It's been very gradual. Lots and lots of releases over time. But it felt like all of a sudden, because I just opened it up and I was like, wait a minute. There's a pretty substantial library here. And on top of that, here's what really excites me about it, is The Witcher 3 is coming, which is the whole thing we've been talking about since the thing launched. Can you downscale graphics enough to have a modern game made for PC and other consoles that are more powerful than the Switch? Can you scale it down enough to get it to work on the Switch? And I think depending on how the performance is for that game in particular on the Switch, to me it will just be like a no-brainer. Like, yes, you're sacrificing the highest quality of the game if you were to play it on a 4K display on your PC or something, like maximize the settings, but it's portable. And all of a sudden, portability has become more important to me than it ever has, really. Like, being able to take it on the train. I ride the train a lot or whatever.
Oh, that's true. That's true. You do, yeah.
Like, it really helps pass the time. So, like, just, like, the thought that I could have this game on any one of these platforms used to be, I would rather have it on PC. I want to play at the highest settings. But slowly I've been convinced that I would actually rather have it be portable. That's what I want more. And so for that reason alone, I think the only thing the Switch is missing for me now, because the library's there, it's just got this feel to it, like in the menus and stuff, like the sounds and the clicks and the... Like Nintendo, in their menus and their menu design and their sound effects and all that stuff, they capture like a certain spirit of fun, right? Whereas when you're in like the PlayStation menu, it's like this airy sort of like mysterious, cool feel, right? And it sort of embodies to me the difference in philosophy of the two companies, and where you fall is a matter of taste, right? But it's like, especially the menu music of older Nintendo consoles, which I think the Switch still needs. They need to put some menu music in there. It's just fun. I've just love to sit on the menu and just like listen to that. It's like sit back and listen to that music for a while. Yeah. It's just like they're capturing, to me, it's cool because I'll be playing maybe something intense. Let's say I was playing Resident Evil 4 or something on the Wii, or something like pretty hardcore. And then I come out and I just like, the tension is all released by this like fun, quirky menu music. And it's just like, dude, video games are awesome. I freaking love this. The Switch needs that menu music, but I mean, even still, I exit the game and it's like, there's a feeling about it that I really, really like. That embodies a philosophy. It's in all of their marketing with the click, the like
they
sound
really,
effect.
Everything's in the background, and anytime you move, that like clicky sound, it stands out a lot.
And what Bieberman's saying too, I love. The flexibility at home is important. I can play it in bed, on the couch, or when my wife wants the TV. It is such a versatile system. And even with your controllers, it's versatile, right? You can play it docked with a Pro controller, how I usually play it, because that Pro controller feels really good in the hands. Or you can take it out and you have the controllers on the system and you're playing it. Or you can take the two Joy-Cons off, hold them in either hand, lay around, like freaking twist your arms behind your head, whatever's comfortable, and just play the game. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I freaking love this thing, though. It's become my favorite console of whatever you want to call it. I know the generations are screwed up because Nintendo releases a new one.
I know
they do
the
old one.
The mid,
and it's just
thing,
like, who knows what freaking generation it is? Who cares? Of the consoles, modern consoles out right now, the Switch is my favorite one. And anyways, it'll be exciting to see now that like most AAA studios are kind of on board with it. Yeah, because we got Doom and Doom Eternal, like Bethesda has ported some modern games to it. If The Witcher 3 works, if it performs, if it holds steady its frame rate, if there's not a problem with it,
it's like it shouldn't be a problem. But
why can't Kingdom Hearts 3 or Final Fantasy 7 Remake or anything else come to it? Because I don't think that those games are even remotely as complex open world wise to The Witcher 3. There's not as much it has to keep track of, I wouldn't think. So who's to say those couldn't be, especially an Unreal Engine, scaled down to work on Switch? Anyways, Cool stuff. I like the Switch a lot.
Hydrated Cloth says that the processor is more efficient, but the battery is the same in the new Switch.
Really?
Yeah, and
so it's just the processor that changed.
They just got a better processor, but because the graphics card is the same, I think, seems, but the processor's faster. It affects the battery life. It doesn't really affect performance, right? So you won't necessarily get higher performance, but you will get longer battery life. So it's just a more efficient processor.
Probably not worth trading in and getting a new one for, but
no.
Still cool if you haven't gotten one yet.
Yeah, if you haven't got one yet, this would be the one to get for sure. It's the one I'll wish I had, because we got the freaking first Switch ever made.
And then Hydrated Cloth just said it's the same processor in the Mini, a new revision.
Oh, I couldn't tell which one you were talking about, I guess. Oh, same processor. Okay, so a new processor in the new one, the same processor in the Mini, a new revision.
Gotcha.
Interesting. Oh, how about that? Well,
all right.
Crazy.
Well, anyways, stuff to keep your eye on. Looks cool. Let's move on to our next topic, which is trailers. We have a couple of trailers from Comic-Con. Comic-Con was this last week.
Yeah.
And I'm a big Star Trek fan. Well,
excuse me.
Like old Star Trek. New Star Trek is, absolute garbage.
They're action movies, they're fun. I only seen the first one, though. I haven't seen any of the others. The 2008, the first new one, the Chris Pine 2008.
That's actually a better Star Wars movie than it is a Star Trek movie.
Yes, sure. I agree. It's a better Star Wars movie than the current Star Wars movies.
Yes, it is. A lot of people are upset about the new direction of Star Wars and everything and how, depressing it is. I think what they've done to Star Trek in recent times is way worse.
It's worse.
Way worse. It's such a departure. It has no idea what its own identity is anymore. It's really bad.
Absolutely. J.J. Abrams, he may have helped ticket sales for a little while, but he kind of made it into something that it was never supposed to be. It's all about freaking fighting now, and it wasn't really supposed to be like that.
Even before that, when the Next Generation movies killed it. Killed it dead, absolutely. Even then, it was really struggling to know, like, how do we take something that's meant to be cerebral and thoughtful and philosophical, but like make it into a movie, right? You got to insert all this action into it. And it just became so dumb. So it's struggled for a long time to like know how to, find an audience. It seems without reason. The answer seems obvious, but they don't seem to get it. Anyways, I was not particularly, how do I put it? I had a lot of doubts about this Picard show. It could be, the concept of it could be awesome, but I just don't trust anyone working there. It is going to be on CBS All Access, which pisses me off. I'm not going to buy a new subscription service.
Everyone's freaking doing this now.
Unless it's amazing. Unless everyone's just raving about it.
And then get your 1 month and get out.
Yeah.
Cancel it.
Jeez, so stupid. Anyways, I saw the trailer, though. I would put the trailer on the screen, but our friggin' video will get flagged if we do that. Actually, you know what? I don't care. This isn't the main channel. Let me pull it up. Just kind of play it in the background. Let them claim it. Let them claim it. Let's put it on the screen here. It surprised me a little bit. It actually looks okay. I will do it without sound, though.
Oh, good.
That at least will help us not get totally screwed.
We'll see.
But there were some lines of dialogue towards the beginning that felt cheesy. They're derivative. It's like, this is going to be... But there were parts of it that really surprised me. Certain casting choices. They're bringing back 7 of 9 from Voyager, the half Borg lady.
Yeah.
They're bringing her back, which I did not see coming at all, but that's kind of cool. And at the beginning there, they showed Data because I think in the last Star Trek, the last Next Generation movie, Data like sacrificed his life to like save the crew, right? So he died. I guess that's a spoiler for that movie. Who's going to watch
sorry.
Who's going to watch the worst Star Trek movie ever made?
It's like 20 years old, right? I mean,
it's horrible. It's really bad. You shouldn't watch it anyway. So just knowing that, I mean, they said it right here in the trailer. He's dead, right? They just showed it. So they spoiled the movie before I did. Anyways.
Real quick, though.
Yeah.
Oh, never mind. Sorry. Colin Peluso said that the podcast went offline. But if it's only for him, then never mind. It's probably a problem on his end.
Check.
Dude McGuy says it didn't drop. So
yeah, it looks like we're on.
Okay. No. Okay. Sorry, Colin. That's your. Okay. Cool.
But another thing people were really wondering about is what kind of story they're going to tell here. Is he going to be? He's not going to captain a ship. Obviously, he's retired from Starfleet. But they're kind of handling this in a way where he's going to have some level of like influence on the bridge. They all respect Picard. They all respect his authority. So they defer to him a little bit, right? And he's kind of rediscovering that part of it. Okay, here's where they show 7-9. That was awesome. And then the real surprising part was at the very end after they show the titles of the show and then fetching. He's back, people. Data is back. Did not expect that either at all. So Data's like literally the best part of the whole original.
I love Data, dude. I love Data, and then that Reading Rainbow guy. That was like,
yep, LaForge. He's awesome
LeVar
too.
Burton, yeah. And it's like, dude, got to bring. So I would use my mom's like hair, Brett. Or
yeah, dude, I did that too.
I'd put it over my eyes and I'd pretend to be him because he was.
Yes,
Fetching
did that too.
And then Data. Okay. Here's the funny thing with Data. Is he CG or not? I couldn't tell.
Nope.
He's not.
That's fetching the real actor.
Wow, that's awesome. That's
so
awesome.
The premise seems to be based on this girl I'm showing on the screen right now. Picard, she comes to him saying like she needs his help. It's a little bit vague as to like what her deal is, but something, which is what we're going to get into after these topics about like high stakes, the fate of the universe, the fate of the world.
How relevant.
Something about her is going to affect the fate of the galaxy or whatever. Something's going on there. And the only hint that I feel like they give is that they show her while they're describing that, and then they show a Borg cube like right after that. So I have a feeling she must be some kind of like, she's attached to the Borg somehow, but in a way to where she's like indistinguishable from a human being. I don't know what they're trying to say with this, but she has some connection to the Borg, I feel.
Well, Hat89 says Jonathan Frakes is Commander Riker, he's supposed to make an appearance also.
That's awesome too.
But that he is directing a few episodes. Whoa.
That makes sense because he directed a lot of episodes of the original series, of the original Next Generation series.
Yeah, Hat89 mentioned that. He directed First Contact.
And he directed some of the movies. I think it was First Contact, which was
I didn't
the
know
best.
That's interesting. Wow.
He's a good director.
I watched his Beyond Belief Fact or Fiction show. That was pretty cool.
That was really good too. But yeah, a lot of the best episodes of the Next Generation in the sort of like second half of the show were directed by him. He's like super good director. And it makes sense because that cast was really tight with each other. They were all really good friends. So if what's the actor's name? Plays Jean-Luc Picard. What the fetch?
Oh, dude, man. Professor X.
What
Xavier? Charles Xavier.
Completely blanking on his name. What is his name? Someone's gonna say it.
I'm looking it up. Wait.
Patrick Stewart. Thank you.
Stewart.
Jeez.
What? I couldn't find that anywhere. Patrick Stewart.
If Patrick Stewart is going to be in this, right? They're going to bring him back. That like he's going to be pulling to get as many of the original cast in there as possible. That's the kind of relationship that they had. So anyways, it doesn't look terrible. I still don't trust anybody who's in charge of Star Trek right now to make something good, but it looks 1,000 times more promising than anything else that I've seen from Star Trek in a while. So part of that just could be nostalgia and just the pull. You know, I'm getting roped in by the same tactics they use on freaking everything now. They're trying to get all the kids who grew up with the stuff in the 80s and 90s back again.
As long as they do it right, it's a fine tactic. But when it's cheaply done and it's like, oh, they'll all watch it even if it sucks. Like, that's when it's really frustrating.
Usually I don't get roped in by that. But in this case, that might be happening. But I just feel like it feels better than anything else any other Star Trek trailer we've had, especially for TV series, in a long time.
Oh, sure.
So.
By the way, Colin Peluso's whole, like, the stream went offline, I believe was a joke because we got copyright claimed anyways.
Oh, gotcha.
I didn't get it for a while.
Colin's 10 steps ahead of everybody, dude.
I know. Can't believe it, man. Can't believe it.
We just can't keep up with the sarcasm. Okay. Anyways, wanted to bring that up. I think that looks all right. But, of course, I'm going to be waiting until probably long after the show airs because I'm not getting CBS All Access unless that show is a 10 out of 10.
Sure.
So,
and then you can just, once it's all out, just binge it all in one day and just.
Yeah.
Exactly. Hopefully they'll give like a free pass, like a 7-day trial.
I did that last year for HBO.
Yeah.
This year I didn't. This year I had to pay for it, but it was okay because Chernobyl was on there and a couple of other shows I wanted to see.
Isn't HBO doing something big now? A new online venture with some other company?
I haven't heard about it.
WB or something like that. Yeah, their HBO Go is turning into. Anyways, I don't really know this. We probably don't have to talk about it, but I believe they're making a new streaming service they're gonna be included in. That's gonna be like the new Netflix or whatever.
Interesting.
Yeah, everyone's getting in on this, man. It's gonna be weird.
Yes, Brent Spiner has data.
At 89 says HBO should pay me for watching that last Game of Thrones season.
Correct. It was that bad. It was that bad. It was horrible. But and it sucks that was the first season in which I paid for the service for HBO. But I got Chernobyl and I got, like I said, a bunch of other stuff. I'm still paying for it now, even afterwards, because there's still stuff I want to see on there. So I don't know. I'll probably cancel it soon, but I didn't cancel it right after Game of Thrones ended because I needed to get my value out of it. Chernobyl's amazing. Everyone should watch it. Watch it twice. It's like the best friggin' thing I've seen in a long time. Okay. Right. Last thing I want to talk about is The Witcher, the Netflix series. I think our most disliked video in the history of our gaming channel was our podcast about the casting of Henry Cavill as Geralt of Rivia in The Witcher. Well, I don't know if everyone liked the casting so much as they hated my take on why I didn't like the casting.
Yes.
But everyone was like, dude, this is bullcrap. Like, give the guy a chance, that kind of sentiment.
Sure, I mean, he's a good actor. We'll see what happens. I
think he is okay.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of people were like, haven't you seen him in what's the show called? It's about King Henry VIII.
Well, the answer to that question is no. I haven't.
I didn't at the time, but I went back as soon as we finished that podcast. Tudors, thank you. Yes, Tudors is because the Tudors, that was like the dynasty of like that particular line or whatever.
Okay.
Anyways, Tudors, Henry Cavill plays a duke who was kind of like the best friend of King Henry VIII when he was a young man. And so he's in the show pretty much all the way through it. And people were like, haven't you, because they were trying to find, like, let me see something similar to show his range, like what he could do for The Witcher, possibly. And I loved the show, by the way. It's actually very, very good. Totally worth seeing. Really enlightening. It is a rated RTV series. It's got nudity and sex, but I mean, this is historical. It's part of like who I mean, obviously it's historical fiction, but what I'm saying is they're painting King Henry VIII in a certain light that is accurate as to how many mistresses and wives and all the stuff that he had. And so anyways, it's a good show. I thought that Henry Cavill in particular he's a competent actor. I'm not saying he's bad. He's not bad at all. I just don't think he's great. I don't think he has a phenomenal range. I think that he kind of comes across milquetoast, about the same in everything he's in.
Better slow down before this becomes the new most disliked podcast.
It may become. But I can't think of a single performance I've seen where it's like, that dude killed it. This is an Oscar-worthy level actor.
Okay. You say Oscar-worthy, fine. Fair point. But Mission Impossible 6, he was very good in that. I thought he was wonderful. I thought his character, the way he portrayed his character, is different from any character he's played before. And I thought it was funny, and I thought he did a good job.
Just a big, strong, brawling guy. Like he's
that is kind of his thing, I guess. Yeah.
And to be fair, I mean, the dude is dedicated to his physique. Like,
he truly is a big, strong brawler. Yeah.
He's legit in terms of like his strength and his weight training and everything like
Arnold Schwarzenegger again. Yeah.
But like, and again, I'm not trying to knock him. I don't see Henry Cavill in a casting in anything else and go, oh man, it's him again. Like, I like him. I think he has enough competence on the screen to carry a role, but I don't think he's charismatic enough for a leading role.
Sure.
Superman might have been the only exception, but even Superman, he wasn't like
Superman. I mean,
he wasn't like stand out, and it wasn't like the best Superman movie or anything. It was just like pretty good, but it wasn't like great. And then of course the follow-ups to that, the Justice League and the Batman vs Superman, those were all terrible movies, so it's hard to judge him on the writing there.
And it's a good fair point, because you got Zack Snyder directing, and he'll never direct a movie that features an Oscar-winning Best Actor, or maybe the actor from the past won an Oscar, but not in his movie. It's more on the director in a lot of cases than the actor.
I love Hat 89's comment here. Geralt of creatine.
I don't get that one, I guess.
Creatine is a supplement.
It's okay. No, I got you.
It gives you bigger pumps because you hold more water weight in your muscles.
Yeah, I got you.
That's freaking hilarious. Anyways, with that being said, I had a lot of reservations about this Witcher series, and everything they showed of him in makeup and like his hair, it looked like a bad fan-made thing. Like, it looked so fake. His hair looked fake. His makeup looked terrible.
Yeah.
Everything looked bad. I can confidently say now that from this trailer that I'm going to put on the screen, that the production value of the show is legit.
It's quite high. Yeah.
I feel better about it having seen this, but I don't feel better about the core issue of him playing Geralt. Like that shot looks good, where he's kind of walking toward the screen there. I like this. This is the forest they were showing there, where Ciri. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I recognize here from the novels, especially the short stories, which is where they are basing that. That's what they're adapting here, is the novels.
Right.
It seems like that they're doing a lot with Yennefer that has not been shown, but that was hinted at, where she was kind of like, looked like she's a bit deformed. They're kind of building up Yennefer's origin in a way that they have not done in the novels. So that's kind of interesting. And they've got Ciri in here, so they're going to have at least elements of the larger saga coming up. But I think in particular, a lot of this is going to be based on the short stories. We'll see. A lot of people in that podcast, when we were talking about it, were like, Geralt is kind of this unfeeling, cold character, stoic character anyways. It's not like Geralt has a lot of range to him. So why are you so concerned about it? It's like, no, you guys, there is a lot more range to Geralt. It's a lot more subtle than you're making it out to be. Geralt definitely has a lot of emotions. He just tries to stifle them. They weren't totally taken from him. A good example would be in, I think it's Blood of Elves. Towards the beginning of the book, he's having a conversation with the other Witchers staying at Kaer Morhen, as well as Triss Merigold. And she's kind of upset at them for the way that they've been raising Ciri there. They've been treating her kind of just like a boy, basically. Not very, what do you call it? Empathetic to the fact that she's becoming a young woman and stuff like that, and stuff that she'd be embarrassed about to talk to men, about. But anyways, she gets into a little bit of an argument with Geralt, and he gets like legit pissed off and kind of like yells at her and stuff. And so because she brings it out of him, she's like, I know you feel emotions, you just stifle them, like, talk to me. So there is definitely a range to Geralt in the novels. That's just one example of many that's really important to the character, though, right? Like, capturing that subtlety in him and not just playing it as this I'm stone-faced assassin or monster slayer guy is the part, the smaller nuances of the character that he shows emotionally. That's the part I'm concerned they won't get right in the show, and is the leading concern I have with Henry Cavill. Not because I think he's bad, but because that's really difficult to capture. What this particular part of the character I think is really tough. But production value on the show looks good. They're definitely doing a lot of things there from the short stories. I want to read a couple things from the director here, or showrunner, I guess. Showrunner Lauren Schmidt Hisrick. She specifically spoke about the books and the original short stories. She says, we're all big fans of the books. We're all big fans of the video games as well, but this is solely based on the books, and that's really where we drew our inspiration from, starting with the short stories. Goes on to say, I mean, for me, you can't skip the short stories. It's absolutely where the world building takes place. I totally agree with that. You really need the short stories.
Yeah.
And where the foundation of the world is built. But also, Freya is sitting here. Ciri is part of our series. So we were also talking about how to make sure we bring her in early enough and make sure Ciri has a story of her own as well. So I think audiences are going to be pretty surprised how we managed to wrap it all up in one season of television. Well, we'll probably be surprised. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to think it works. But I'm at least...
We'll be surprised. That's a great... You'll be surprised how bad it is.
I probably will be surprised. Gonna be like, why the fetch you do that? But this to me is definitely a for sure. I will watch this because, I mean, Netflix I've had for years, right? It's like it's no cost to me.
Right,
it's just going to be there, and I'm going to be able to watch it. So it's not like a CBS All Access where I've got to like buy a new thing. So I will watch it, but that it is a tough thing to do. And I'm not saying that I feel like, oh, they're going to mess it up necessarily, but what they are trying to do is tell an origin story for Yennefer, which was not in the novels. They're trying to basically begin the journey for Ciri, which comes well after the short stories take place, but they're also trying to tell the short stories to do all the world building and the introduction to Geralt as a Witcher, right? They're trying to do all three of those. Almost it looks like simultaneously because they're trying to bring Ciri in early enough is what she's saying. The whole thing is that you have to get through The Last Wish, the first novel of anthology of short stories for The Witcher, in order for the Ciri story to have any context or any meaning to it, why it's important. And for Yennefer and Geralt to meet for the first time, and for their whole thing to take place. So, how can you do that? How can you give all that context, but bring Ciri in early enough to where it's like you don't have at least several episodes worth of stuff first before Ciri can even be introduced? Because you have to have, I think it's the fourth short story in The Last Wish, where Geralt goes to Sintra. And that whole thing goes down with Pavetta, who is Ciri's mother, basically, and like the power, and forget his name, what they call him, Dooney, I think, the werewolf. How can you bring Ciri in early enough? So that's a difficult thing to do. What they're trying to do, I get it. It makes sense. We have this character. We got to introduce that character early. But how can you do that without getting all the context first? So I don't know if that can work. I really don't. I'm interested to see how they do it. But definitely skeptical.
Dude McGuy says, how about that last shot of the trailer with the darkened face around the eyes? It looks cool.
Oh, did I not show that?
Well, it's just the very last shot of Geralt is the shot where it does actually look like pretty cool.
Yeah.
Hopefully there's more of that and less of the not cool Geralt. But yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. I think that spider that he's fighting, I could be mistaken, but that was reminiscent to me of like the beginning sequence of the newest book, Season of Storms, which I read a couple months ago. He fights like a giant spider at the beginning of that. But see, that book felt like one of the short stories in terms of its actual like scale, which we're about to get into, the scale stakes thing. But it was actually pretty long. It was just one story that they told, not a bunch of short ones. But it felt like similar in scale to the Last Wish level stories. So I don't know how they're going to bring that in, because that's a pretty long story. There's a lot there.
Oh, Legendary Masamune. Sorry, forgot to bring this up. We didn't do the podcast last week, partly because my son was in the hospital. So he's doing better now.
Oh, right.
He no longer needs surgery. Just wanted to make sure. I want to say thanks to everybody for reaching out and offering your support. And thank you very much. My son's doing great. He doesn't need surgery. The issue is shrinking, and he seems to be doing better now. So all good news. Since last week.
I actually meant to bring that up at the beginning. So
yeah, I forgot too, actually. Just had to talk about that Switch.
Things are doing much better.
Yeah.
LARPup says, speaking of Witcher books, was Season of Storms ever started in the book club? No.
Book club
we stopped the book club.
We
dead. Killed the book club.
Dead in the water. It was fun though. I enjoyed the books we read.
I did too. Yeah, but book club is done.
For now.
We're not doing it.
Yes. It is postponed indefinitely.
Let's move on to our main topic. Finish this off. So today we wanted to talk about stakes for storytelling, high stakes. How do you write a story with really high stakes when it's a low scale, right?
Yeah.
I think so often in movies and just in storytelling in general, it's a novel, whether it's a TV series, whether it's a movie, whether it's a video game, the stakes are always or tend to very often be save the world.
Yes. The whole world's at stake.
Imminent danger.
Every time. And it's only up to you and your 16-year-old teenager. And you got to save the world.
Your group of other
your misfit
preteens.
And you get
to save the world.
That's so funny.
I
mean, you know why that story resonates, obviously. Oh, my gosh, every story doesn't have to be that, right?
Well, here's the thing. It is the easiest way to create high stakes.
Yeah.
The entire world will be destroyed. Everyone on the face of the planet will be killed. Life as you know it will end. Like that, on a surface level, is just like intuitively feels like that's the highest possible stakes there are, right? And I'm not knocking that. I'm not saying that that's bad or anything like that. The novel I'm writing is similar. The whole world's at stake, right? Like you got to save the entire planet. Actually, even delving into more like the universe, really. But so like, there's definitely something to that works. That there's a reason why it's used so much, but it can become fatiguing. And this is kind of what I've talked about a lot in the past, is how repetition of any specific thing, it doesn't matter what it is, too much repetition will make you become acclimated to it, it will no longer hold any power or impact in. And so when you see a save the world story, the first time you see it, it's like, oh my gosh, the whole world is going to be destroyed. What are they going to do? And you really feel it. And then the next time it's like, yeah. And the next time it's like, next time it's like, and then like enough times it's like, eh. It doesn't feel like it's important anymore because you've been through this so many times.
And that's why they keep having to try to do bigger, like with the Marvel movies or with a lot of the superhero movies. You got to destroy, a whole city, and now you got to destroy multiple whole cities, and now you got to destroy the whole planet.
And the tendency as well, especially for in this age when we're in this franchise obsessed industry now, where it's like everything you make, if it's successful, we have to turn it into like 10 more movies.
Yeah,
we gotta just go with that thing until it's dead, right? We're just gonna keep pumping out sequels. You have to then top the last one. You have to keep outdoing it. You have to like go bigger and bigger and bigger every time.
And you already saved the world in that first one. So what do you do now? And it gets really tired.
And so, I mean, it just gets to the point of insanity, right? I think superhero comics are a great example of this because when they were self-contained, they had a lot of save the city or save the world type plots. But what happens? How do you go bigger than that? Let's put them all together and have a threat so big you have to have every superhero in the entire pantheon of our collection. They have to team up to fight it. Because the whole universe is going to be erased. It's like you have to just keep getting more and more until it just becomes absurd.
Yeah.
But I think the reason that I wanted to talk about this is because that's not what creates high stakes. High stakes are not created by the scale of the crisis or the conflict or whatever. That's not what makes the stakes high. Because I've seen a lot of movies where the fate of the universe is there, and I feel no stakes. It's like, yeah, they're going to win. I don't feel like any danger. Like, I don't feel the stakes, even though the scale of the thing is as big as it can get.
Mm-hmm.
Many of the superhero movies that come out feel that way to me. I feel no attachment to it.
Absolutely.
It's like, even though the scale is ridiculous and the budgets for these movies are immense and the scale of what they're showing, the fights is so huge, I feel nothing. It's been really funny to me how when I was a kid, I went to the movies because I want to see those awesome action scenes. I really look forward to action scenes, right? Action scenes are awesome. And today, I sometimes stop paying attention. I will like get on my phone while the action scene's going on and I'm watching the movie. I will get on my phone and browse and just wait for it to be over. And when it's over and they're back into like more of the drama and the development and the exposition, that's when I'll pay attention again. Because it's become fatiguing how much bigger they have to get every time. And I'm just not impressed by it anymore. I feel nothing. So what is happening there? To me, it's the fact that movies have become, in general, more focused on action. You're seeing more and more and more screen time given to action and less and less screen time given to character development.
Yeah, or the context for the action.
The context for the action.
The important part.
Is it. That is where stakes are created, is in the context for the characters. The only reason I will care about success or failure is if I understand why success or failure is important to the character. It has nothing to do with how powerful the villain is or how many people will die if he is allowed to do what he wants to do or anything like that. The scale of it is irrelevant.
Or a billion or a trillion. Then the fourth movie would be a quadrillion people dying now. Oh my gosh. Like, it's just a number. Once you get high enough, it doesn't actually matter.
Yeah. The scale is irrelevant to how high the stakes are. The stakes are entirely created and maintained and delivered in how much we understand about how the character feels about it. For instance, in my own life, if I lock myself out of my house and I don't know where my keys are, and I lost my car keys and I'm going to be late to the meeting or whatever, that can be exceptionally high stakes for me because of what it means to me to miss that meeting or be late or not be able to get inside, or I missed the train. That's the last train for the day. I'm freaking like 80 miles away from home. How am I going to get back? These kinds of everyday things we go through, they really suck. And it's like, oh man, like you get so upset about it and you feel such powerful emotions because the stakes are high for you. What it means to you, the amount of stress it's going to bring into your life, the inconvenience of it. These are not life and death situations. That's not that the whole city is going to be wiped out because you lost your keys. The world's not going to end, but it feels that way almost to you because of what that conflict means to you.
Yep.
So if you want to create high stakes, no matter what scale it's at, you have to spend time showing the audience why the context of what this means to your character.
Yeah.
And if we can really understand that, we can see it, we can relate with them on that, the stakes will be really, really high. That's really, like, for me, that's it. There's not really that much more to say about it.
Sure. I mean, it's all about character development. You need to write characters that you care about. And as long as you care about the characters, almost anything that happens to them, you will care about, will affect you, right? I mean, think of most of the stories that you hear every day. You go to work or school or wherever you go, and somebody tells you, oh my gosh, dude, this crazy thing happened to me today. And they tell you the story. And if that story was made into a movie, it would probably be boring. It probably wasn't actually a very good story. But because you know the person, it's like, oh man, oh, that sucks. Oh, I can't believe it. Oh, that's crazy. And you react more heavily because of who it happened to. Like Mike said, losing your keys. So people come up and be like, oh man, I lost my keys. Guess freaking what? They threw them in the garbage can. Oh, are you serious? Oh, that sucks. And then it turns out like, well, that's actually not that interesting of a story. And you're kind of stupid for doing that, right? But when it's somebody that you know and care about, and it's like, oh, he does this all the time. I've seen him throw his pants in the garbage before. And then it's like you have that history of that character and you know who they are and you can see in your mind how they probably went about throwing their keys in the garbage. It makes it mean so much more. And it makes it just kind of, I don't know, makes it a lot more impactful of a story, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, even something like, you bought something new. It was an expensive item that you purchased, and then you lost it like the next day, and you never found it again. Dude, that freaking sucks. I spent all that money, all that work that I did to earn the money and save for it, and then like I lost it or it got stolen the next day. That's huge stakes for the person, right?
That is
huge stakes. Yeah. I got a comment I want to read here from Jonah the Man. I already posted this, but this might help Mike. An important factor in creating high stakes is to keep the lore, in-universe concepts, and story beats internally consistent, possibly even rooted in the material realm. Example being Final Fantasy VII's magic and materia system is tied to the life stream and Mako energy, so it does not have infinite power. This is important because the audience needs to feel as though the characters are trapped with limited time and limited options. The audience can't take looks like he got cut off in the middle of what he's saying. But
can't take it seriously if they still suspect that the writer. Okay, he posted it before, but I guess there's a character limit on Twitch as to how long you're coming.
Oh, okay, gotcha. But yes, this is actually something Brandon Sanderson talks about. That we might do an episode on this a bit later, because I just went through this whole process in my novel of creating a rational magic system that is internally consistent and has limitations and rules that are all explained. But limits, the center of his point is limitations are more interesting than abilities or capabilities. What it can do is not as interested in what it cannot do. It's way more interesting to know what you cannot do with magic than what you can do with magic.
Sure, yeah, sure.
Because it creates conflict internally. It's like, oh man, this is all I can do with this. all these other things I can't do. So how do I succeed with only this ability to do that? And so it makes your characters feel like geniuses when they win using the magic.
Right.
Whereas if you don't explain it, you have no idea. This is the problem with Harry Potter. There's always some magic that has been unexplained that serves as a deus ex machina. Yeah. And it's like, oh, magic, just, you can do anything with magic if you know enough.
Yeah.
Versus it's way more interesting when it's like, no, you can only do this, this, and this. Now solve the problem with a limited set of tools. So that creates high stakes. Limitations create high stakes. That's a very good point.
You know, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Gandalf when you talk about magic and you don't know exactly what Gandalf can do. You don't know what he's capable of doing, but he does mention multiple times what he cannot do. There are rules and there are matches that he personally can't win. Like, for instance, he can't just go and fight Sauron himself. He can't do it. And I believe he admits that in his current form, Sauron's more powerful than him. But like, you don't know what that means, right? But you're like, and as Gandalf, a person, you know, when you see him fight the Balrog, it's like, it wasn't this big flash of crazy magical spells. He just kind of like hit the rock on the bridge with just enough force that it started to crumble, and he just knew how to do that, you know, and he uses as little magic as possible. So you don't really know what Gandalf's capable of doing, but he does mention what he's not capable of doing. And that makes him even more mysterious and interesting as a character, I think.
It's great that you bring that up, because that was one of the examples I will bring up again in a future episode about creating rational magic systems, because you don't always have to do this. You don't always have to explain how your magic works, right? You have soft and hard magic systems. And to me, the distinguishing factor is, does your main character, with whom the perspective of the movie or the stories through their eyes, do they use magic? You need a hard magic system. You need a rational magic system. You explain all the rules. If your main character is not using magic, like Frodo Baggins does not, then you can have a soft magic system where you don't have to explain it, because through their eyes, they don't get it either.
Exactly. Yeah.
The hobbits don't understand how magic works, so we don't necessarily need to.
Right.
But like you just said, magic is almost never the answer to the problems in Lord of the Rings.
Sure.
He never uses it. Well, I don't want to say never. Maybe there is an example, but
it's
generally
like
speaking,
an illusion. Magic is still very illusory in his world.
Magic isn't, but eagles are. There you go. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. But they don't use magic to solve the problems. They have another issue. But anyways, we'll make that a topic for a future podcast. But
yeah, I know. The Last Airbender, that people are bringing it up, Last Airbender and Full Metal Alchemist in the comments, talking about limitations on like what you could do. I think Full Metal Alchemist is so interesting because of the limitations, even though the homunculi kind of like break all the rules and whatever. But you know, there are certain things you can't do, and if you don't have the right materials, you basically can't do anything. Mm-hmm. And like, that's pretty cool. Whereas Harry Potter, it's just you need your wand, I guess, but as long as you have your wand, like, you can do whatever you want.
Yep. Okay. So
So okay, keep going.
I was just going to say, did you have somebody that you were going to read there?
I've got two comments here, but
okay, go ahead.
Okay, so we've got Hydrated Cloth says, I'd say you need to write characters really well, and many pop culture writers right now are focused more on plot and events than characters. Yes. Whereas the stories that we talked about, such as Losing Your Keys, have you ever told a story once and nobody laughs and you're like, you had to be there, right?
Yeah, you had to be there.
Well, what you're really saying when you say, you had to be there, is, the character development and the many hours of time being spent with these people made it funny in a way that you wouldn't understand unless you were, unless you knew these people.
In other words, the person telling the story is a bad storyteller.
Sure, exactly.
They didn't provide the context and the character development.
You talked about like, what about like somebody like loses, what is it? They bought something with their hard-earned money and then they ended up losing it or something like that. They know how many hours they worked, right? Yes. They know how long
they went through it.
You slog through that whole thing, and then you get the reward, which is a sweet steak that you dropped on the ground. Oh, shoot,
Yeah.
But if you just tell the story, this dude dropped his steak on the ground, it doesn't have any impact. You've got to show the hours worked. You've got to talk about what job was he doing for all those hours to make that money. Did it suck? Probably. And how many hours did he have to work? And you can't just say how many hours he had to work. You have to really go into the experience of what it's like to work those hours and then come out of it and lose all of your money or whatever.
Yep.
So what you're really saying when you say you had to be there is that, the character... it's true. The character development wasn't there, and you probably don't have the time to expand on the character in a way that would be efficient with your time.
And again, this is not a knock on Save the World stories or life and death stories. That is about the most intuitive way to create high stakes that there is. All of us have an instinct.
Those stories have been told for thousands of years.
We all have an instinct to preserve our own life and to survive. Like, death is literally the worst thing that could happen to any individual. That is the highest stakes you can have. Not being alive anymore, dying. That sucks, right? So it's like the easiest thing to tap into to get the point across that it's a life or death situation. That's as high as stakes can get from like a plot perspective, I guess, right? But like we're saying, a lot of stories today are focused on the plot, not often the characters and establishing what it means to the characters. You don't have to make that the conflict in order for the stakes to feel just as high or close to it, at least.
Yeah.
And that's all about getting way more personal with the story. Instead of focusing on the external conflict, we have to go into the character and find out what is the context that makes this situation so important to the person, makes it so stressful, makes it so urgent to the character. Creating urgency through character development is what's important. We just lost Kaysen. He'll be back momentarily. And I'm going to want him here for this next part because we wanted to go through and give some of our favorite examples of stories that do this, that don't have an end of the world or a life or death sort of situation being what the stakes are. But they still feel really high stakes, right? I'm going to read some comments until he gets back. Jonah the Man says, the audience can't take the story seriously if they suspect that the writer is going to pull out a magical resolve button in the last 10 minutes. Exactly. And that is literally what every Harry Potter story is pulling out the magical resolve button. Hold on. There you are.
And there's a third.
Good. Yeah, it looks like there's three, but it's actually just two of you. Actually, I think you're still lagging a bit. Hold on. It looked like it might have caught up, but now you're frozen again.
Sorry.
I can hear you though, so that's good. Okay. Before I lose you again, you still there? Crap, he's not there. Let me read a couple more. Jonah the Man says Final Fantasy 13 has this exact problem. Totally agree. The fake Final Fantasy origin story had the stakes quite high, being the Final Fantasy and all. I guess like the behind the scenes, right? For the developers. Colin Peluso, the stake dropping on the ground, that's pretty low stakes. The audience can't take the story seriously if they suspect that the writer is going to pull out... Oh, I already saw that. Saving the world with the 4 or 5 of your best friends is a story I couldn't possibly relate to on any level, says Onwed. I much prefer stories like Suikoden 1 and 2, where you're just fighting over scraps of land and largely just a tool being manipulated by runes, by strategists, by backstabbers around you. Yeah, I think the first time I kind of started thinking about this as a topic for the podcast was when I was playing through Final Fantasy XII, because Final Fantasy XII's story is similar to like Suikoden 1, for instance. It's a smaller region. It's not like an end of the world type of scenario. It still has like the fate of the kingdom kind of there, which is similar in scale, not quite as high, but you can go even much lower than that, and I'm sure you're aware of that, but I think Suikoden 1 is a good example. We're really struggling to get Kaysen back here. Let me send him a text. Really, oops, struggling. Oh, there you are. Nope, he's gone. We'll let him try one more time before we move on to sharing some examples. Okay, let's do this quick while you're here.
Okay.
Got it? As an example you want to share? Holy balls.
Yes, I do have something as an example. However, my internet out. My internet's doing very bad things right now.
Oh,
so can I just text you my...
Text me the answer. I'll share it on the stream.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to shoot it to you. Actually, I might just throw it in the comment. Just be sure to read the comment, okay?
Okay, he's going to put it into the Twitch chat.
Okay. It goes along the lines with John of the Man. He said, 1 death is a tragedy, 1 million is a statistic. Okay. Here's
Great
my
point.
message.
Okay, he's typing it in.
Oh,
no.
Shoot.
But actually, that reminds me of something I was going to say earlier. You were talking about, when you know the person, it's way more impactful, right?
Yeah.
That's like kind of... I've made this point before with storytelling, too. It's like the difference between your best friend being murdered and then hearing about a random person on the news you don't know being murdered, right?
Yeah.
It's like one's going to make you be destroyed inside for a long time. You'll have a loss that you'll never probably ever really recover from. You'll probably move on with life or whatever,
right.
But like the pain of that will live with you forever. Yeah. Versus the same exact murder happening to some stranger you never met before. You go, oh, that's too bad. And you don't think about it ever again.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with a movie. The character,
your character development. That's the only difference.
If your character is a stranger to the audience, then guess what? We won't care if he lives or dies, or if she lives or dies, or if they fail or succeed. But if we know them personally, we know what the conflict means to them, we know how important it is to them, we love that person, all of a sudden we're really engaged.
Yeah. So it looks like I'm
you're back.
My internet's stable. So I'll just go ahead and say this real quick.
Yeah.
So the question is, which do you care about more? Well, I said this before, but I'll say it again. 100,000 Yemenis being killed in a blockade, or your best friend of 20 years dying. How about a pet dog or a cat, right?
Sure.
You will likely care more about your pet dog dying than 100,000 people dying over in a country because of a war and famine and stuff they can't do anything about. Yeah. That's just how humans are, right? So when it's someone you're close to, when you've grown attached, it doesn't matter if the whole world gets destroyed as long as that person lives, right? Yeah. So creating good enough characters so that the stakes become losing them or them getting hurt. High stakes, but not really saving the world. And another way of putting this would be quality over quantity. It's not just the number of things happening. It's the quality of what's happening. You know, what kind of character is this happening to? A throwaway character who had like 2 lines, or, one of the main characters you've actually spent time developing. So, am I still here?
Yeah, you're still here. You're good.
Okay. So this is my example. Was my personally, I think the best example I could think of was Toy Story, right? So what were the stakes in Toy Story? The stakes were the kid might lose his toys, right? Maybe.
Or for Woody, maybe I'm not going to be the favorite toy anymore.
Woody, yeah, sure. Like in in the first one, it's Woody not being the favorite toy anymore. The favorite toy anymore. Now they're alive, so they're people. So maybe it's more like, oh, my best friend, I'm not the favorite friend anymore. Or maybe like of a kid with a parent, and then the parent has a new baby, and it's like, oh, I'm not the favorite kid anymore. Those stakes are so low, like not even stakes. The conflict there is so nothing. It's so like small and minuscule. And even what ends up happening later. Okay, now I know Sid is there is the threat of them maybe dying because of Sid, right? Mm-hmm. But even still, they're freaking toys. And even after the Sid thing is done with, it's like, and they're flying around, and the whole point is they got to get back to Andy. They got to get back to Andy. Otherwise they're lost. It's kind of like Homeward Bound, right? There's the dogs. Yeah. You got to get back to the person who owns you. And the stakes for that are just they're incredibly low. But my gosh, are the Toy Story movies are really good. Those are some of the best movies ever made, in my opinion. And like, what is the potential downside here? It's like the toys will be lost, or it's just not that big of a deal. But because of the character development, it becomes a huge deal, and you become so attached that even a small thing happened, like Woody's arm getting ripped, and he can't go to cowboy camp now. You feel that. That's a big deal, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. It's the scale of the conflict, very low, but the personal stakes for Woody, really, really high.
Extremely high. That is literally his whole world. Andy is Woody's entire world.
Yep.
And they really make you feel that. And it's like, oh man, if I'm not the favorite toy,
his entire worth is attached to that.
He does get over it. That's one of the things I love about the movies. Is, his self-worth, his everything he has is attached to that. And man, just very well done. And without the character development, without understanding Woody's life and all that kind of stuff, and you know, without the interactions with the other toys, and just everything was done so masterfully, you would not give a fetch about any of these characters, any of these toys, any of the stupid stuff that's happening here.
I think my favorite example that I wanted to bring up was Dead Poet Society. Really, really good movie if you haven't seen it.
Very good.
Again, like the personal stakes there for the characters. This is like a really rigid, like highbrow kind of prep school. I don't know if that's exactly the right terminology for it, but even still, these kids all go there with high expectations set on them by their parents, and they're expected to follow a certain course in their career, and they're not allowed to do anything but focus on their studies and literally just live their entire lives with the singular goal of pleasing their parents. That's kind of like what most of these kids are going through, right? And so the type of teachers they have at these schools, they're very traditional and old-fashioned. They really sort of like figuratively beat them into that course and into that line of thinking, this very narrow-minded, singular way of thinking and living your life. And Robin Williams' character is a teacher that comes who was a former student at this school as well, which is why he gets the job, because he was an alumni of the school. Is that right? Alumnus, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Of the school. But his entire purpose is to break these kids of that mindset and free them from that and get them to see the world in many different ways and to write poetry and be creative and express themselves, which they've never been allowed to do before. And so the stakes in that movie, literally, these boys discover themselves for the first time. They are allowed in this setting, in this classroom, and then elsewhere in this society, this Dead Poet Society they create, to express who they really are for the first time. And so the stakes of that movie are losing that, going back to not living true to yourself, right? And the stakes are so high for certain characters, I won't spoil the movie, that it gets into some really dark territory.
Sure.
And I think of all of the movies I could think of off the top of my head or by reading lists, that was one of the best examples of it not being a large scale by any means. It's not really a life or death scenario. It's there's not a threat to even just the school at large. It's really small scale, really personal stories of these kids who we have seen the whole movie. We see how their parents treated them. We see the expectations put on them. We see, the path that they've been set on life. We see how they struggle with that. We see how they're not really alive. They're just kind of going through the motions. They're constantly afraid of like what people are going to think about them if they do something wrong. And then they discover who they are and their whole world opens up and you really become attached to that version of them because that's the real person. You've just found him. And then the threat of that being taken away is, man, it's depressing. It's like, no, you can't go back to that. No, anyways, amazing movie. Everyone should see it. But I think those are two really good examples. There are probably many others you could think of. I thought maybe
what about, because those are both movies, what about like some video games? Can you think of a video game that has low stakes but somehow still like works really well as a game? I feel like games fall into the save the world trope more often than any other medium.
And I mean, novels have, I think, even more freedom to explore stuff that's not like end of the world type stuff, because even for movies, like in Hollywood, it's like, oh, we want to like sell people on the experience. It's a big experience. When you go to the movies, it's all about being big, right? This is something you can't get at home.
Yeah.
So
big
they
screen, big sound. Yeah.
Yeah. So video games and movies tend to really lean in that direction. Novels, I think, more often can explore the more personal stuff. But
it's true. Probably. Yeah.
Hydroclaw says Psychonauts. You enter individual minds. I've never played Psychonauts. Hydrocloth also said, what about a show like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where they intentionally downplay the world-ending stakes and elevate the everyday stuff?
That is,
I haven't seen Buffy.
I haven't either. Yeah, don't know what to say about that, but that sounds interesting. That sounds sort of like a comedy kind of thing, like a Shaun of the Dead kind of thing, where it's like the world's ending, but oh man, my girlfriend wants to break up with me. I'm so, and even though zombie apocalypse is happening, the movie's really about this guy trying to get back with his ex-girlfriend. Mm-hmm. And so that's like a comedy thing. You can kind of turn the stakes around in that sense, but I don't see that often being done in a dramatic way, I guess.
Yeah.
But maybe Buffy the Vampire Slayer does that.
Now, here's something that I wanted to talk about next week, and maybe this could actually bleed into two other topics. Hat89 says, this is an interesting topic, though, because even in historical retellings in which you already know how it ends, the stakes are still high because of what it means to the fictional characters you're going to attach to. And this is my whole point about prequels that we talked about before. In prequels, you know the end. Yeah. So you can't focus on the plot.
Yes, you just can't. You can't.
The plot can't be the focus because there's no stakes in the plot. We know how it ends. You have to dive into the individual. You have to dive into the character, explore why it's important to them in order for us to really like get some meaning out of it.
Sure. Right? That would be the only, or maybe not the only, but that would be probably the best reason to make a prequel is to dive into character stuff.
And next week, we're going to talk about remakes. And I feel the same way about remakes. Remakes have the same problem if you're a person who consumed the original thing. If you're going to add more to the plot, it's like, why add additional things to the plot unless you're clarifying something? It's like, this was a very confusing thing. People didn't understand this. So we're going to add this plot device in order to help that be understood better. That's one thing. But just adding additional plot for the sake of making the plot bigger or the scale higher, or just like, I don't understand that. What you should do, in my opinion, is define the characters better, is really dive into what it means to them. And in the Final Fantasy VII Remake, I see kind of both things going on there. I see them adding things to the plot that seem to not really be necessary, like I forget what they call them, but the little Dementor ghosts that like fly around. They're adding like these spirits that follow the characters around everywhere they go. Totally unrelated to the original game. Was never.
Yeah, what is the world's going
on
there?
No idea what that is. That's the kind of thing. Of course, I'll wait to see how they implement that. Right, I have no idea how that's going to be implemented. I have suspicions that it's going to be totally unnecessary and needless to add that particular thing. But what I do like is that they're really deepening the characters' conflicting feelings about what they're doing in Avalanche, the eco-terrorism that they're a part of.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. That's the kind of thing you make remakes for, is to deepen that sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think at the heart of it all, again, stakes are created through the context, that the reasons why the character thinks it matters, why they feel it's important or urgent. If we get that, the stakes will be high, no matter what scale they're at. Scale's irrelevant as long as we know how important.
That's the exact conclusion that I came to. Essentially, the scale is basically completely irrelevant. It's all about who is it happening to. I don't care what happens. Who is it happening to? That's what makes me care or not.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Mm.
All right. That is the end of our podcast this week. I'm going to read a couple of comments here.
Yeah. Guys, give us some community stories.
Hat89 says, this is why TNG was so good. It focused on the characters. They had to because you knew everyone was going to resolve at the end. You knew everyone was going to resolve at the end. Yes. Star Trek was great when it was philosophical, when it was character-driven, right? The show was never good because, oh, the Borg are going to destroy Earth, everyone! Oh no, the entire human civilization is going to be assimilated. That wasn't why it was cool. In fact, that got so fatiguing that it became silly.
Yeah.
The Borg being reused as this world-ending threat over and over again started to make it suck. That's not what was important. What was important is that Picard became a Borg. Holy crap. We love him. How do we get him back? No! Locutus! Who is like that is why that was so impactful, that the ending of that. It was not about the Borg are on their way to Earth. We have no chance to fight them. It's basically we're entirely doomed. It was Locutus stepped in front of the screen and said, just go watch it. Watch the end of season 3. That scene is so amazing. Yeah. Resistance is futile. The person they've all grown to love as their captain, they admire, they look up to him. It's just like, holy crap, we have to kill this Borg cube. We have to kill our captain. And it ends kind of on a fire like that. It's just so good, man. It's insanely good. Anyway, good point. Hat 89.
Very good point. Somebody else brought up The Shining and how at the beginning of The Shining, you know, essentially how it's going to end. But you get to see the descent into madness of that character. And that's where the real horror kind of sets in for the film. So, anyone else? I mean, we have a lot. You guys are doing great. We appreciate all the comments. I know we can only ever read a couple, but thanks for all the engagement that you guys provide. It really helps the podcast to move along and to, we get a lot of ideas from your comments.
Also, the corrections too. One thing,
and telling us who freaking Captain Picard's actor is. My gosh, we can't remember.
Like when we first started podcasting, like 3 years ago or whatever, right? We would record it and then upload it later, and then we'd have all these people being like, "This was wrong. You said this, I was wrong," and it's like, dang it. But now it's like we can be corrected immediately. So people who watch it later are like, "Oh yeah, they got it right," because we got it right midstream, right?
Yeah, that's good.
Colin Pluso, you didn't read any of my epic steak stories. Well, they were mostly puns.
Yeah, Colin,
I did read them. I just did not repeat them.
Enough with the low stakes, high stakes business.
It's become fatiguing. The impact has worn off with the repetition, guys.
They were very funny, but God,
that's true in comedy too. Like you cannot repeat the same beat. You can't. It goes back to who says it? It's Robert McKee talking about the rule of threes. I think it is. If with dialogue, like if you say something once, great. You say it again, it loses its impact. You say it a third time, people start laughing at it, right? Like you can't say the same thing 3 times in your same conversation.
Right.
I think the example he uses is character A says, "Come here, I have to talk to you." Character B says, "No, I want to be left alone." Character C says, "No, it's really important that you let me say what I have to say." Character B says, "No, I'm tired of this. I want to go away." Character A says, "No, you must listen to what I have to say." Character B is like, "I am not going to listen. I'm leaving." Like if you do that 3 times, see, you started laughing, right? The third time,
that does make it funny. That is a comedic kind of thing.
Like it loses its impact, and even in comedy, that's true. If you repeat the same joke, the second time, it's like, okay, got it. You repeat it the third time, it's like, dude, I get it. The word steak and steak are spelled differently, but they sound the same.
But they're pronounced the same.
I get it.
I did have to laugh out loud when I mentioned the guy bought his steak. I probably even used the example of steak because of the chat, but he dropped it on the ground and he worked so hard for 20 hours to buy that steak. It was $100 Kobe beef steak. And he drops it and then
Yes.
Colin Peluso's like, well, he dropped his stakes. Those are pretty low stakes. I did have to laugh at that.
That was a good joke. That was a good joke. That's why I read that one. That was why I read that one. Good.
I feel like there was some amount of like self-awareness that, we've made the same joke too many times. It's not funny anymore. But isn't it so funny that we're still making the same joke so many times, even though it's not funny anymore? And there's like this inside joke kind of thing that gets built among the community. I think.
Now we're getting into the deep technicalities.
It's funny because it's not funny. It's like what do you call it? It's like a next level meme kind of thing.
Yeah, Colin Peluso, master of jokes.
Yeah,
he's on another level.
Okay,
right. That's it for this week, everybody. Thank you for joining us. It's a good discussion.
I thought so.
We'll see you again next week. We're talking about remakes. We're going to be talking about remakes. I think I'm going to try and see that Lion King movie, this new one. Because all I've heard like about it since it's come out is this is a soulless, shot-for-shot remake of the original done in CGI, and it loses all of its character. We've talked about how facial animation and stuff is lost when you try to make it all like realistic and stuff, and there's like a whole element to the original you can't carry over. I'm going to see it for the purpose of analyzation and talking about remakes next week on the podcast.
Well, that's a good idea. I may not see it, but
I wouldn't blame anyone for not seeing it. It doesn't look.
I haven't seen the single Disney remake. The only one I have seen is Maleficent, and that's arguably not even a remake. It's just a different angle of the story. But I haven't seen any of the remakes yet. None of them have really appealed to me. I like the originals. Why remake it?
Yep.
But also, we're going to talk about that next week.
Yeah. Also, Jonah the Man is actually correct, and this is why I think they felt so soulless. Disney is only making these movies for copyright reasons. They're trying to maintain the license and copyright on the properties.
Oh, that's freaking genius. I didn't even
That's exactly why they're doing it.
Disney, dude,
that's exactly why they're doing it.
I hate them, and I love them, but I hate them too a lot.
Yep.
That's kind of how they know
how you feel. I feel that way literally about like every large corporation.
I know,
especially in video games. I love Nintendo.
Greatest company. Yeah, Nintendo's the greatest.
I hate Nintendo.
I freaking hate YouTube too. While we're at it,
I hate YouTube. YouTube's also afforded me some of the greatest possibilities of my entire life. I've had some of the most fun in my life making YouTube videos. I love YouTube for what it's allowed me to be able to do, but I hate them. There's literally always that other side of the coin with corporations.
Yeah.
The greed, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
But they still have provided lots of like really, really great memories for me, like, I don't know. There's a lot of happiness created. There's also a lot of misery created. Like, what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
There you go.
For real, we're done.
Okay,
love
bye.
everybody. Have a good one. Peace out. Thank you.